Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a very special video because this is a review of a new figure of my all-time favorite Masters of the Universe character, Sy-Klone. And so I've got the brand new figure in the middle there, surrounded by the previous figures of the character. This is my Blue Man crew. This is what Smurfs look like when they evolve. On your left, we got the OG Sy-Klone released in the 1980s, followed by the 2002 figure. And then we've got classic Sy-Klone, which came out a few years ago, followed by Funko Pop, which was based on his Filmation appearance. So this is going to be a deep dive into Sy-Klone. We're going to take a look at this new figure, see how he stacks up to the old ones, and take a look at who this character is. So here's some early concept art for the figure from back in the 80s, and he was always meant to be this more science fiction looking character. And you can see that he was really meant to be a robot originally from these designs. So Sy-Klone's final design really seemed to go with the idea of him being a cyborg. It's still science fiction based, but it's also got some superhero influence, which is appropriate because he does have superhuman abilities. He's got a radar in his chest that can detect evil, and he has tornado powers similar to DC Comics' Red Tornado. And I just think he looks really cool, and that's why he's my favorite Masters character. So the Origins line recreates these figures. They're on the same scale. They all look very similar, but they have added articulation so you can pose them more. And they also have added details and accessories sometimes. And that's all fine, but that's usually not enough to make me buy a figure I already own. So why am I getting Origins figures when I already own the old figures? Because as much as we loved our figures as children, they sometimes got damaged. I got decapitated Tila, I got my favorite He-Man missing a leg, and OG He-Man is missing his crotch. I have no idea how any of that happened. But even if all their limbs and crotches are still intact, they probably have paint rub. And so, unfortunately, that's just the way Masters of the Universe figures work sometimes. The Wars on Eternia take their toll. My OG Sy-Klone is one of the glorious exceptions to that rule. He is a little bit scuffed up, but for the most part, he looks fantastic. But unfortunately, he does have this issue. His legs, over time, have simply worn out. And so it is very, very, very difficult to get this poor guy to stand. It is sad. I really hate it. So there's these rubber cords inside of the legs that actually give them a really great range of motion. It lets them sit down in the vehicles, but unfortunately over time they simply wear out in some of the figures. And I can get him to stand if I'm really, really patient and very lucky, but it's just so difficult, and I've always wanted to get a figure of him that I can pose and display. So let's take a look at the new figure, starting with this gorgeous artwork on this collector-friendly packaging. The packaging is amazing and certainly worth displaying with him in it. So the box art has him fighting these horde troopers that are being produced in this factory on top of the Fright Zone. We've got Hurricane Hordak in the background. It just looks so cool. The artwork wraps around the package so we can see the monster in the Fright Zone on one side and a bunch of damaged horde troopers on the other side. On the back, you get this really gorgeous artwork of Sy-Klone fighting the Fright Zone monster, and it looks amazing. So this artwork is inspired by the original mini-comic from the 80s, The Hordes of Hordak. This actually came with the horde troopers, but it had a major role for Sy-Klone. So Hurricane Hordak attacks Sy-Klone and the other Masters. He kidnaps Sy-Klone and takes him to the Fright Zone, where there's a factory creating this endless horde of horde robots. And it turns out that Sy-Klone is super effective against the seemingly invincible horde troopers. And it's really cool that they chose to pay tribute to this fantastic Stephen Grant written mini-comic. And so the great thing about the packaging is you can open it up without damaging it. You just need to cut some tape on the side. And when you open up the box, you're going to see this inner flap, and it actually has the instructions for the figure on it. This is how you're going to use his special action feature. And so that's really cool. And so you can just take the figure out, and he's just going to slide right out and pretty much just pulls right out of the packaging. You're going to have to cut a couple things to get the red ring behind him out, but that's it. And so here he is out of the package, and he comes with everything you see here, and we're going to get around to all of this. But first, let's talk about the mini comic real quick. So he does come with a mini comic. He is fighting Lord Grasp, who is a villain who was unreleased in the original line, who is getting a new figure in Origins. So notice in this new mini comic how his powers seem to be completely generated by his hands. This ties into one of his accessories. So the first thing you should do when you get any modern action figure is you should test the articulation. You should see if all the joints are working. This is incredibly important because fused joints are the leading cause of action figure breakage, right? If you try to bend a fused joint, if you try to force it, it'll snap. If you don't plan to use that articulation point and you just leave it and that figure falls, it's more prone to breakage. So you want to find your fused joints if there are any and take care of that right off the bat. So I did get some resistance when I tried bending his knees, so I took a hairdryer to it. And so I usually run mine about 20 seconds, but it just depends on how hot your hairdryer is. But you take the hairdryer to it, warm it up, and then try bending the knees again and see if they work. If it doesn't work the first time, you can just repeat the process, but mine worked just fine with just 20 seconds on the hairdryer, warmed up those joints, get them moving, and once you've bent it the first time, you're good. That figure should be fine from there on out. So Sy-Klone does come with his shield, and yeah, he is a cyborg who's super fast and has godlike tornado powers, so I'm not sure why he needs a tiny shield, but it's just a signature of this character to come with his shield. And so here he is with the other versions of Sy-Klone that come with the shield, so you can see who shielded it best. Now for his next accessory, I need to remove his hands. And this is another instance where if you get too much resistance from that figure, you're going to want to stop. And so again, you're going to want to repeat that hairdryer trick, warm them up. Again, I do about 20 seconds on mine, but your times may vary. And after that, you try it again, and it works like a charm. And once you have removed this man's hands, you are ready for his brand new, never seen before accessory of tornado powers. This is the first time this has ever been done with Sy-Klone, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it until I got it in person. And I gotta say, I really dig this. I hope it's coming through in the photos, but this is a really, really cool looking option for displaying your figure, and I do appreciate this extra being included with Sy-Klone. And so his last accessory is this round thing, and I'm never quite sure what to call it. It originated in the 2002 line. It's the Hurricane Hula Hoop. I'm just going to call it a ring. So one difference you'll notice between this and the original figure is he has a backpack with some holes in it, and that's for the ring. And so the ring will attach to the back and like that, and so that way you can recreate his look from 2002. He also had this option for classics as well. And so here's another who wore it best, and you'll notice on the 2002 figure on your right that the ring is a little bit higher. We'll get around to that in a minute. And so I accidentally activated his action feature while taking off the ring, and all you do is you pull up on his torso, and now he's ready to do his spinning action feature. And there's a dial on the back, and you just use that to make him spin around like a human tornado. And let's see how this compares to the previous figures that have had this action feature. Here's his vintage counterpart in the 1980s, and you'll notice that the arms are kind of getting in the way when I'm trying to use the dial. The taller 2000X figure doesn't have that problem, so he can go much faster. If you want to get the vintage figure really going, turn him on his side or upside down so the gravity will get the arms out of your way, and then you can really make him spin. All right, so to deactivate that feature, you just push it down, or at least you're supposed to, and I cannot get it to go back down. It is just very resistant, and you're just supposed to push it back down, and I just can't get it to work. And so eventually I did get it to go back down. I can't really tell you how. I want to thank Mattel for putting the action feature in there for people who wanted it and giving me the most terrifying 15 minutes of my life where I thought I broke this guy. I will probably not be using the action feature on this new figure again. All right, back to the ring. There is another configuration you can do. Now, you want to make sure that the bar on the back of it that plugs into the backpack is in the up position, but you can actually do it like this, where it literally does look like a hula hoop. But I gotta say, this is actually a nice little alternate configuration you can have. It does kind of look cool. And one final configuration is you can actually plug it into the top of the backpack as well. And so you want to also make sure that that bar is facing up, and you can plug it in there. And now it is going to be higher up like that 2002 figure. And it is articulated in this position, so you can put it so it's over his shoulders like you could do on the 2000X figure. Sy-Klone can also hold the ring like it's a big old weapon, face the hula hoop of death. And he can also get a reverse grip on it so he can pose with it just like the Classics figure could. So let's talk about the body of the figure, starting with that awesome lenticular sticker of the radar on his chest. This is straight out of the old figure, and I think they really nailed it. It really captures the effect from the vintage figure perfectly. I think they did a great job of capturing the look of the original figure while updating the sculpt. The sculpt and paint look fantastic, both the front and the back of the figure. It is just a really, really good upgrade on the original Sy-Klone. So one major difference between this new figure and the old one is the head sculpt is slightly different. It's sculpted in a way that makes him more obviously Asian, and I don't consider this a change to the character so much as a clarification. The head sculpts in the old line tended to be kind of racially ambiguous and open to interpretation. Let me give you an example. Here's my man Fisto. By Earth standards, I would say he looks very Caucasian. In fact, he was actually Man-at-Arms' brother in the 2002 series. But you can take that exact same head sculpt, change the skin color, and get you a black character. That's what they were going to do with an unproduced character called Plasmar, who is being teased for the Origins line. And so in Sy-Klone's case, it's not just a head sculpt that's ambiguous, it's the character itself because of the blue skin. He could be pretty much any ethnicity. So as a kid in the 80s, I always assumed he had blue skin because he was a cyborg, and unbeknownst to me, there were actually two origins at the time that backed that up. One was in a Golden Book storybook called I Have the Power, which was released in America, and the other was in the Masters of the Universe issue 71 in the UK comics. So in the Golden Books, he is a acrobat who goes by the stage name The Human Tornado. He's performing for the King and Queen when Skeletor kidnaps him, and we never get a particularly good look at him. He's always in the background, but we can tell he has dark hair. Skeletor turns him into a cyborg thinking that he can control Sy-Klone, but of course he can't, and Sy-Klone ends up becoming a good guy. In the UK comics, he actually starts out as a runner named Dashel, who is from another planet, and he's actually a dead ringer for Prince Adam. The Horde invades his planet, and he gets grievously injured while fighting them. His father turns him into a cyborg in order to save his life, and so he leads his people to fight the Horde and kick them off the planet. And then he learns that the Horde is heading to Eternia, and so he goes to Eternia to stop them from taking over that planet as well. This is my favorite origin for him because it is freaking epic, but it also makes the most sense with his figure, right? He has a radar that shows him the universe, right? So he can navigate through space. Plus, he has a planet on his belt. You combine that with a look that no one else on Eternia has, and it just makes sense that this dude is an alien from another planet. So the first backstory we got in animation for the character was part of the 2002 animated series, and it was in an episode called The Mystery of Anwat Gar. Most likely Anwat Gar was a takeoff on the real-life wonder of the world Angkor Wat, which is located in Cambodia. So the episode involves a power hidden in the ancient ruins of Anwat Gar, and Anwat Gar has a very similar aesthetic to Angkor Wat, and it's a very cool episode. and I just love it to death. So Sy-Klone in this is actually the protector that was left behind to guard this ancient power. And so my assumption was, assuming he's a cyborg and not just a robot, is that he was most likely a normal-looking Asian dude before he became Sy-Klone. But there was a fan theory at the time that insisted that the people of Anwat Gar were called the Gar, and because Sy-Klone was blue-skinned, that meant the Gar were blue-skinned. And so this fan theory actually made it into the official Classics bio for Sy-Klone when that figure came out, and so it made him into a blue-skinned Gar. And for some reason, it has him getting his powers from armor he wears. And so last year we got a brand new origin for Sy-Klone in the Dark Horse Comics miniseries, Masters of the Universe Forge of Destiny. It does have him coming from a modern-day version of Anwat Gar, but it also does squeeze in elements from the other origins too. The 4-issue miniseries will be released in trade paperback in May. And so just like there are plenty of different figures of him, there's plenty of different versions of who he is and what his backstory is. And they keep coming, right? Right now, you can pre-order a Masterverse figure of him. They'll have a completely different backstory, and I love it. I love all of the love that this guy has gotten over the years. So very, very happy to be adding this Origins version of Sy-Klone to my collection. Very happy to be having a Sy-Klone figure on that original scale that I can now pose and display in my collection. All right, that's it. Like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, good journey.